It's a me! Mario is a lot of things. He's a caveman, he's a construction worker, he's 2D, he's a bride, he's a bird watcher? Yeah, he is. Now that Peach is saved, we're going on a birding odyssey to see exactly what we can find, what we can learn about them, and to see if Mario Odyssey is a good birding game. Let's a bird! According to the Super Mario Wiki, Cascade Kingdom is based off of Iguazu Falls, which is located between Brazil and Argentina. I was skeptical at first because I didn't see any sources for this information, but then I took a look at some of the photos of Iguazu Falls and yeah, that's definitely Cascade Kingdom. And upon looking a bit further into this, I discovered that both Brazil and Argentina have a rich history of fossils being unearthed here. Especially Argentina, which hosts the area known as Patagonia, where huge numbers of fossils are uncovered. The largest dinosaur in the world, Patagotitan maiorum, was actually found in Argentina. Unfortunately, that dinosaur is not found in this game, but that's fine because we're here on bird business. I bring all this up about the area it's based on to help us better understand if the needs of the beautiful scarlet macaw that resides here is being met. You can find them all over the map with a large group sitting near the T-Rex, and flocks of them flying in the background. Visually, it's very similar to a real macaw. It has the same wrinkly exposed skin area on the face, as well as a large hooked upper beak known as the maxilla, and a small bottom of the beak known as the mandible. Bro's trying to look Max with a recessed mandible. The tail is pointed and takes up a huge portion of the body, just like real macaws, whose tails make up a third to a half their total body length, and their coloring is pretty spot on. So it got a lot of things right, but what about where we're lacking? The shape and overall sizing of the bird could be bigger. I mean, scarlet macaws are one of the biggest parrots, and this one's as big as the other birds in the game. Location-wise, the cool thing is we know where this place is based off of, so we can actually go look at the map, and nope, they're not. They are found primarily in South America, so points for that. But when we look at Iguazu Falls, there's 3 recorded instances of seeing scarlet macaws, and I have no idea what the context is. But what I do know is that this area is marked as the birds only being seen because of human intervention, meaning they're not naturally occurring here. Macaws thrive in habitats that are humid, check, and are filled with dense, tall trees. Look, they also live in savannas, but these guys love tall trees. And look at this. And look at that one. Someone's been deforesting in the Mario world, and I wonder, who could have done this? But the good thing is that the area we run around in is only one of many islands, and it seems like there are plenty of tall trees on the other ones. Now, what's a bird got to eat around here? I actually found this video by the YouTuber GeoNebula, where he specifically identifies the plants in the Cascade Kingdom, which was helpful for me if you want to check it out. It's only 3 minutes. So, Cascade Kingdom is an island filled with different ferns, and macaws will eat ferns, but that's far from enough. They need nuts, and fruits, and seeds, and even insects. Which there is one we know of, the golden ringed dragonfly, which can be found flying here, which is great, but it's still not enough. I have to believe the vegetation on the other islands are supplying these birds with the food they need because they would definitely be malnourished here. Lastly, I want to talk about their sound. Scarlet macaws are known to have a very deep and guttural squawk, which, if I'm being totally vulnerable with you all, has always scared me. So I put the audio into BirdNet, and the best it could give me was a 13% chance that it's human, which was a very bad sign of what was to come. I'll spare you the details of the multiple days long search to figure out what exactly this was, and jump to the final hours of searching. So I came across this video of this YouTuber visiting a bird park in Iguazu Falls, and I skipped right to the macaw section and immediately noticed the sounds they were making in this video actually sounded similar, just deeper in tone to the ones in the game. So I thought, okay, what if they took the macaw sound and then sped up the audio? So I took the audio from in-game, slowed it down so it wasn't so high-pitched and fast, and put the audio into BirdNet, and the result was a much higher parrot-based guess. Obviously, the result is not as high as I would like, but we gotta take the wins where we can get them. So my conclusion is that this sound was either made by a parrot and then sped up, or made by a human and then distorted and sped up. The red desert sea of the Sand Kingdom pairs beautifully with its main bird, a primarily green, though it looks extremely yellow in the sunlight, parrot with a more yellow underside and red tips on its wings and tail. And if you really look, you can see some faint reddish cheek spots. I could not find a bird that I considered to be an exact match, but I'd say it's closest to the female rose-ringed parakeet and the olive-headed lorikeet, though neither are found in Mexico and don't have red tips on their wings. You heard what that one bird was called, right? The olive-headed lorikeet? Olive-headed? Bird names genuinely make no sense sometimes. You ever seen a red-bellied woodpecker? Yeah, that red belly is super noticeable. But because this is a new bird, I get to do something I've always wanted to do and name it. That's right, I'm the namer, and you better like what I pick. Its scientific name will be Ruberene olmecki. Rub comes from the Latin word for red, which is ruber, and arene is Latin for sand. Olmecki is a reference to the Olmec people, which is one of the Mesoamerican civilization that this kingdom is based on. And then its common name will be the yellow-headed lorikeet. Yeah, I am gonna be petty. Alright, now that we've named it, we can ask questions, like what are the little guys eating? Well, it kind of depends on if the birds are closer to a parakeet or a lorikeet. A big thing parakeets eat are seeds. We have these moon plant seeds that seem to appear here somehow, and though they're huge, I imagine they can pick at it together. And then we have the cacti that grows here. Parrots actually can eat the fruit and seed pods cacti sprout. The cacti in the Sand Kingdom have what I can only assume are red thorns, but what if they're not just thorns? What if they're seed pods? Given how much they look like seed pods, I think the Sand Kingdom has a unique cacti that has seed pods that double as thorns. Pretty metal. We also have palm trees, and to be honest, I cannot tell the difference between palm trees. So I don't know which one this one is, but palm trees in general are good sources of fruits and seeds and even nests for birds. Please don't be mad at me, I am the bird lady, not the palm lady. The diet changes a bit if our bird is genetically closer to a lorikeet. Lorikeets are actually nectarivores, which means they almost exclusively eat nectar and pollen. They have specialized brush tongues designed for this diet. There obviously isn't a whole lot of flora throughout this desert, but the people of Tostarena keep quite a few flowers along their buildings, as well as the special potted ones you can grow. Any flowering cacti will help supplement as well as whatever fruits the palms produce. I don't know what the deal is with the bouncy flowers, but I guess we'll say its nectar is edible, if not a little more gelatinous. Moving on, the yellow-headed lorikeets seem to have a sight that not even the moais have, since they know exactly where the invisible platforms are in the moai habitat. Of course, it's also possible they figured it out through other means, like trial and error, or through feeling the change of wind in the air around them, since platforms would disrupt the flow of air. And finally, this is what they sound like. We've scored a huge win with this kingdom because it has not one, but two birds. This beautiful, entirely dark brown bird of prey. I was going back and forth between like 3 different birds for this, but then I found out that the golden eagle is Mexico's national bird. So that's it. That's the golden eagle. The golden eagle has been an important symbol to Mexican culture as far back as the Aztec Empire, when their god told them to build a city where they saw an eagle eating a snake perched on a cactus. This event is what is depicted in the center of Mexico's flag. The one in the Sand Kingdom doesn't seem to have the golden nape that real ones do, but other than that, I'd say it's pretty accurate. Golden eagles prefer partially or completely open areas. They will fly low to the ground for hunting, and it says their tails will stick out farther than their heads. So, it's great. In terms of food, they most likely eat a lot of the geckos living in the desert, and any visiting rabbits. But given how scarce food is, I wouldn't be surprised if they also are eating the yellow-headed lorikeets, and maybe even some goombas. And here's its call. This is actually the very well-known call of the red-tailed hawk. It is often used to portray bald eagles, but I guess golden eagles aren't safe from this deception either. The golden eagles are just one instance of the influence of Mesoamerican cultures on this kingdom. Nuckalotec is based on the colossal stone heads of the Olmec culture. The Olmecs date all the way back to 1200 BCE, predating the Aztec Empire by about 2,000 years. This is important because Nuckalotec has feathers on his headdress. Yeah, you thought I wouldn't notice, didn't you? There's not really a way for me to tell where the feathers come from just based on this because it's so nondescript. But I figured we could look into the Olmec culture a little bit and see if there are any clues. And I discovered that they often use feathers for headdresses, like Nuckalotec, and had a lot of feather imagery in their art. But specifically, it seems like they really loved the resplendent quetzal. And frankly, I don't blame them. Their coloring is beautiful and they have varying feather lengths, which makes it great for crafting. To verify, I went and looked up the quetzal bird, and apparently they are known for being sacred to Mesoamerican cultures. So much so that it was considered a crime to kill them. So they'd capture them to pluck a few feathers and then let them go. Because Olmecs are so far back in history, most of the talk of quetzal's sacredness come from like the Aztec and Mayan cultures. But it's likely the Olmecs are the ones who started this love of the quetzals in the first place. Ah, the Wooded Kingdom. My favorite map, environmentally speaking. This place is so nature forward, like it was clearly created to foster a beautiful natural environment with so many tall trees. I bet Cappy's fuming. And amongst all this greenery is the beautiful blue jay. My only gripe with it visually is that the marking lining the face is dark blue instead of black, but otherwise it's great, and they're found in their favorite habitat, a dense forest. These birds are portrayed as very friendly and big fans of the residents known as steam gardeners. Their sweet relationship is even referenced in the brochure for this kingdom. This love of robots also results in them being the only bird to sit all over the Odyssey. It is a bit ironic to me that these are the designated friendly birds, when in our world they have a reputation for being pretty mean. But maybe they wanted to combat that stereotype, and I appreciate that. Aww. Look at this guy. It's just like me. What is there to eat in this abundant forest? A blue jay's diet is largely made of food sourced from plants, but they are opportunistic eaters, which basically just means their diet is adaptable and based upon whatever is readily available and abundant. There are plenty of seeds available, as one, if not more, of the steam gardeners have seed dispensers built into them. But not just any seed. They look a lot like acorns, which are the seeds of oak trees and a personal favorite of blue jays. Apparently, they are credited with helping to spread oak trees after the last glacial period. Because they love them so much, they will hide them in the ground, and the ones they forget about become trees. Though they are very loud, I've never heard them brag about this accomplishment, and I love to see them staying humble. It's interesting because despite their love of acorns and oak trees, I'm pretty sure all the trees here are redwoods or sequoias, which are pine trees. Even more of an interesting choice, because blue jays are found in most of the US, but the small area they're not found is the exact area that those occur. The Stellar jay would have been a more appropriate bird for this specific environment. Moving on, pine trees produce pine cones, and blue jays will eat the seeds found within those. Other native residents here are chipmunks, rainbow trout, and the cabbage white butterfly. The butterflies are definitely getting snatched up by the blue jays, but the trout and chipmunks are most likely only eaten if they're already deceased. When it comes to sound, this is what the Wooded Kingdom's blue jay sounds like. This is not the well-known call of the blue jay, but blue jays are mimics, and so this could be it imitating another bird, which, according to BirdNet, there's a 23% chance this is a reed bunting. While there are a ton of birds that can be heard in the ambiance here, the unfortunate aspect of this game is that in most kingdoms you can't turn their music off, and even when there is no music playing, the bird sounds are so layered and overlapping that I just can't get a good ID on any of them. The cool thing though is that BirdNet thought Mario saying ravioli was a Eurasian eagle owl. Who would have thought? But if we go down into the deep woods, there are two birds that can be heard only here. That is the great horned owl, and either a hairy woodpecker according to the audiophile, or a downy woodpecker according to BirdNet. Something I stumbled upon at random was this tweet, and yes, I still use the terms tweet in Twitter. You think I'm gonna abandon the original bird branding to call it X? No. Anyway, I found this tweet by Supper Mario Broth, great name, that states there are 3 kingdoms that have rare variations of their typical birds, and these variations have a 15% chance of occurring here, and are nose exclusive, meaning they'll only land on your nose and not around town. Apparently, this kingdom's bird is a bluer jay. I think the idea of having a rare variation that only lands on your nose is super fun. However, I didn't find these claims of them being nose exclusive or even rare true, because I found both the blue and bluer jay around the kingdom. So I'm not sure why that is if they found this in the game files, but I wanted to bring it up now before we get to the other kingdoms, and also to acknowledge that it at least gets the fact that there are 2 variations correct. The beautiful, elegant Lake Kingdom has an equally beautiful and elegant native bird. They've got white bellies and white faces, and then a very pretty pink all along their back and head framing their face. They have blue-green eyes, and their wings look both like fabric and fish scales, just like the bodies of the lock ladies that live here. They also have these little dots around their bodies that remind me of sparkles, and I especially love the ones lining their brows. I want it! There was not a single real-life bird that I could think of or find that even closely resembled this one, so congratulations. You stumped me. But that means we get to name a second bird. Yahoo! For the scientific name, I decided to go with Lacus roseus. Lacus being Latin for lake, and roseus being Latin for pink. And for this one, I wanted to include you guys in the naming of the bird because I just thought you should have a say. So I went and gave you 3 options. 1, the wool-winged sparrow. 2, the sparkle-browed finch. And then 3, the pink, rosy, sweet, tiny little bird. And I knew you guys were going to do this. Guess what? This was just a social experiment to determine if the general public could be trusted with naming our beautiful birds that help give us life, and you failed. I'm just kidding. I did guess this would win, but if anything, it just proves that you guys are as good as real bird namers, because what is this? So allow me to officially introduce the pink, rosy, sweet, tiny little bird. Someone get this on Mario Wiki. This is what the sweet birds sound like. And the best BirdNet could give me was a 22% chance that this was a Louisiana water thrush. So what are they eating? This bird is likely either a sparrow or a finch, and those birds primarily eat seeds. I've only seen evidence of the one seed in the water cave, so I don't know how abundant those are, but I figured the bushes around the kingdom must have some food we can't see. If they can hide coins in someone's secret stash of cat Mario pics, then I'm sure they're hiding some kind of seed. Then there's this garland lining the edges of the cliffs that has this white, circle? My best guess as to what this is a white olive. They're obviously white, and I feel like their leaves are similar, so if that's what it is, sign those babies up. While sparrows are mostly grain eaters, they are considered adaptable foragers, and those that live near big water sources have been documented eating crustaceans, as well as, albeit more rarely, fish, which we have an abundance of here, and they're also quite small, which makes them easier to eat for the little guys. But the Lake Kingdom has a special plant made of sequins that can be found underwater, and its leaves can be found scattered around the sandy areas. And for a bird that looks like it has fabric wings, I imagine this makes up a big portion of their diet. Speaking of which, what is the pink, rosy, sweet, tiny little bird made of? Its wings kind of look like a quilt to me, but that would be way too heavy for a bird. Do you know how light a single bird's feather is? It weighs 0.008 grams. That's less than a paperclip. So it's going to have to be a light fabric, and I'm going to say it's either silk or chiffon. Both are very light, breathable, and flowy, but most importantly, they're elegant. And what is this kingdom if not the epitome of elegance? Despite being pretty barren, the one thing I can say about the Cloud Kingdom is that it is definitely very peaceful and serene visually. But it's one of the very few kingdoms with no music, which makes the lack of bird sounds even more noticeable, and less peaceful than it could have been. This is despite the fact that the white dove lives here. You think I want to listen to my own thoughts? No. I want to listen to the birds. They're a key part of what makes this place so great, as noted in the brochure. Perhaps signifying how peaceful this place is, many doves can be found living here. Supposedly, spotting a flock of doves will grant you increased happiness. And indeed it does, brother. Look at them go. But, unfortunately, we have some problems. Like, it says it's a dove, but what kind? There are two possibilities that I determined. The white Barbary dove, or the white homing pigeon, which is just a domestic rock pigeon. But, Ren, one is a pigeon and one is a dove, so wouldn't it obviously be the dove? Yes, but there are no scientific differences between the two. Their names are used interchangeably. As an example, both have been used in dove releases that you see at funerals and weddings and other events. The difference that I use to determine which one is which is that little bump you see on the beak. This is called the operculum. It's a structure that occurs on some birds to protect the nostrils from things like dust and debris. The homing pigeon has a noticeably white one, and the Barbary dove doesn't. Which means it's a rock pigeon. Okay, we've identified it, but I want to go back to dove releases for a second because it's kind of what this whole kingdom depicts. And I can only assume that that's purposeful given the emphasis on peace in this kingdom. People use dove releases to symbolize love and freedom and peace, but the truth of the practice is a bit barbaric. But Barbary doves don't have homing instincts, so they'll get lost and perish in the wild for any number of reasons, including starvation. And homing pigeons aren't always trained well enough to find their way back home. And even when they are, their stark white coloring makes them prime targets for winged predators, and because of this, many will not make it home. Obviously, this is a pretty not fun fact, but it changed the way I viewed this kingdom. I know the brochure speculates at a literal kingdom having once existed here, but I view this place as a heaven that exists solely for the doves and pigeons that were released for entertainment and never made it home. A place where they can experience true peace instead of just being a symbol for it. It made even more sense when I considered there's nothing to eat or drink here, because they don't need it. So, this is heaven. And this is hell. Nah, I'm just kidding. I do feel a bit lost though, because where are all the birds? Oh, there's one. Klepto is a condor, which I only know because of the Mario Wiki, saying it used to be called Klepto the condor. There wasn't anything in-game suggesting its species. Interesting choice to be a condor instead of a vulture, because there are only two species of birds currently that are labeled as condors. That being the Andean condor and the California condor, and it looks like neither of them. Although the original designs of Klepto looked more like the Andean condor than the current design, but I am a fan of this change in appearance because it cements it as more of its own species. But I'm not here to talk about its history. I'm here to talk about this Klepto in this game, and how my interaction with it cemented my disdain for Cappy. So Klepto comes and steals Cappy when you get to a certain spot. We all know this. And I can't exactly blame Cappy for being a bit distraught when this happens, but I also feel like it's pretty hypocritical of him because isn't that like his whole thing? Capturing sentient beings without their permission? Doing whatever he wants with them because he feels like it? But it isn't just Cappy villainizing this bird. Let's read an excerpt from the brochure, shall we? It's titled Thief of the Skies. The undisputed ruler of the skies here is the klepto. This large bird has keen eyesight that enables it to spot prey from far above before swooping down to snatch it up in an instant. Once ensnared in its sharp claws, escape is quite difficult, and many smaller visitors have been carried off in this way. And then next to a picture of it, it says, it even looks evil. Okay. Get a load of the unbiased journalism here. It paints klepto as purposefully evil, and I have to wonder how they came to that conclusion. And how much of this info is accurate. I mean, it says people are snatched up in its giant claws, but from what we see, Cappy is clearly held in its mouth. And then it mentions small visitors being carried off. And perhaps that's true, but if we talk to Captain Toad, he says he was brought here by a giant bird, meaning klepto, and I don't know why we would assume it was done with malice when Captain Toad's whole thing is visiting every kingdom. If anything, klepto did him a favor. Alright, let's move on to analyzing its actual behavior. Klepto at least has more actions than a typical kingdom's bird, as you can spot him clapping his beak together and shaking his feathers and then, obviously, grabbing Cappy. Klepto will hold Cappy in its mouth and then move on to a different spot if you get too close. It very much feels to me that Klepto is teasing Mario, but again, why are we interpreting that as evil? Vultures and condors are very intelligent and curious animals who have been documented playing. Specifically, their methods of playing include tug of war, tossing, chasing, and retrieving objects. Does that sound familiar? This kingdom is called the Lost Kingdom and is known for the fact that it is very remote and not very visited, and condors are social birds. Do you see any other condors here? Or any birds whatsoever? I don't think Klepto is evil, I think he's just a lonely bird. And how do we repay its attempt to socialize? Oh, and after Cappy is caught by him a second time, he calls him a stupid bird. Cappy? More like crappy, dude. Let's give him the klepto treatment. Alright, sorry, I just had to get that off my chest. So what is klepto eating here? Condors are carrion birds, which means they feast on dead animals. They don't kill anything. The only other native residents here are glidon, tripedal, fuzzies, and tropical wigglers, meaning they're being eaten after they pass away. Any visiting rabbits that perish here make a pretty good meal too. In terms of water, there is none here. So I have to assume that Klepto and the other residents here evolved to be immune to the poison and get hydration from it. Oh, you hear that sound? That's what Klepto sounds like. It's pretty apparent that this is a man-made sound, and that's fine. But does it mimic what real condors sound like? No, actually, not at all. Because New World vultures don't have voice boxes. So they are largely silent and can only make sounds like hissing and grunting. You might have noticed in your time at the Lost Kingdom, though, that there are a lot of other birds that can be heard throughout the kingdom. Like the Wooded Kingdom, I really couldn't get a good ID because of how overlapping it was. But the best I could get from BirdNet is that there seems to be a common myna and a ferruginous pygmy owl in there. The last bird business of this kingdom is that Captain Toad makes a remark about a bird not in this game. He says, "How did I get here? I was dropped off by a giant bird. A different giant bird than my usual one." So the bird who dropped him off is obviously a reference to Klepto. But the other bird, the one he says is his usual giant bird, is a reference to a bird called Wingo, which is the antagonist of the game Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. I'm not going to go into depth about this bird because it's not in this game, but I just wanted to make sure I called out the bird reference. Hello everyone, and welcome to New Donk City. I'm Mayor Pauline. I got this one covered, Mario. New Donk City is the better version of New York City for a lot of reasons, but namely because our city is so music-centered. Music plays the second you step foot here. It's a feature, not a bug. That's a bug. And not only that, but I sing. Imagine that, a mayor who sings. But today we're talking about birds. Before you make your way to central New Donk City, where all the music is, you can actually hear two bird songs in the background. According to BirdNet, this is said to be the brown-eared bulbul, and this is apparently a common chaffinch. But the star of the show today is our special birds that reside here. They're called rock pigeons. You think they like rock music? Rock pigeons in New York City have commonly been called awful names like trash birds and rats with wings. But you know what they say, one man's trash is another mayor's treasure. But we do need to get serious for just a second. Horribly enough, the first person to call pigeons rats with wings was actually the 1966 New York City Parks Commissioner Thomas Hoving. He gave a speech that listed the downfall of Bryant Park being due to vandalism, litter, and worst of all, rats with wings. The park's supervisor, Andrew Petrochko, went on to state the pigeons are the most persistent vandal because it was impossible to stop the pigeon feeders, equating acts of compassion with destruction. So while vandalism and litter are bad things, they blamed the downfall of the parks on the people and animals who used them as safe havens. This is only 21 years after World War II. And during World War II, homing pigeons were used as military messengers and were so instrumental that 32 were awarded Dickens medals, the highest award an animal can achieve when serving the military. One pigeon named G.I. Joe single-handedly saved 100 soldiers' lives and even more civilians. Propaganda can come in the form of something as simple as a name or comment and turn you against something or someone who have done nothing to deserve it. But not all hope is lost. New York City erected a statue of the rock pigeon in 2024, and while it is part of a rotating art program and has already been removed, it quickly became embraced by the people of New York and is so meaningful there was a petition to keep it around and a party saying goodbye to it, proving that those wrongfully demonized won't stay that way and will instead be loved and accepted again. I mean, look at this guy. He's so happy, and compare that to this guy who's so lonely. Notice a difference? New Donk City has its own tribute in the form of Squawks Park, where a bunch of pigeons can be found. Squawking is associated with birds, but pigeons coo, which you can actually hear if you get close enough to one of them. There are two versions of the rock dove here, the female rock dove and the male rock dove. The key differences being the lighter color and black band on the wings of the male as well as its more iridescent neck. You can find them around the city as well as one of the white rock pigeons flying around Squawks Park. It hasn't yet made its way to the Cloud Kingdom. Before I give the mic back to Mario, let's do a quick quiz. What are the pigeons eating here? Correct. They eat what our new donkers don't finish. Leftovers from places like Espresso's Espresso and Banana Bagels. Don't knock it till you try it. Where do the pigeons get their water from? That's right. The one single pool we have above our cafe. I should probably get a fountain or something. And lastly, what time is it? Correct. I'm a back, and I'm a cold because we're in the Snow Kingdom. And guess what kind of birds there are in the Snow Kingdom? That's right, penguins. What the hell? So I think the one thing most everyone knows about penguins is that they can't fly. But why can't penguins fly? Basically, penguin bodies evolved to be great flyers, but only underwater. So instead of having the hollow bones needed to be in the air, they have dense bones to help them dive better. They have multiple adaptations that make them more suited for flying underwater and living in such cold climates, like heavy muscles, fat deposits, densely packed feathers, and wings that are short and stiff. I got this from a short informative article on All About Birds, which is a great website for information, and you can even leave comments, so I'm sure those are really helpful too. Oh. So for all intents and purposes, we should assume that these penguins can't fly, and yet they do, which means it's time for a new species. For a scientific name, I'm going with Carunix minimus. Car coming from the Latin word caruleum, meaning blue, nix meaning snow, and minimus meaning the smallest. For a common name, I'm going to go with the miraculous flying penguin. So what's this little guy like? Well, it definitely has very compact feathers like its penguin cousins, which you can tell not just by looking at it, but also by the fact that it doesn't shed any feathers when it flies, which is what all the other kingdom's birds do. In terms of its color pattern, it's closest to the Adelaide penguin, but in terms of literal color, it is closest to the little blue penguin, also known as the fairy penguin, which is just the perfect name, isn't it? Here's what the miraculous flying penguin sounds like. Its diet consists of, well, I'm not totally sure. We have no way of knowing if it can swim because we never see it do so. But here's what I do know. The water here is super shallow. Like, there's not really a lot of swimming room. Even the fish here are barely underwater. It could eat the fish poking out of the water, but the fish are bigger than they are, so I can't really see that happening. Plus, there are only 7 fish that are even here, so not exactly an abundant supply. My theory is that these penguins adapted to fly because the food is so scarce here and the water so shallow that they had to adapt to that and find a new method to get food. So whatever they're eating is somewhere beyond that wall, and a mystery to me. Welcome to my personal nightmare, a land of sand and carbonated water. Is it beautiful? Yeah, but it's also carbonated and sandy. Bubblaine is Mario's France. Given that the residents are beret-wearing snails, the boss has a French name, the French words merci and bonjour are used in the names of a moon, and they have a lot of seagulls. Any Larophiles out there? Look, these ones do something other than just jump around. They scratch themselves. How exciting! These seagulls are an interesting case because they simultaneously look like a lot of different gulls in different stages of life, but also somehow not quite exact enough to any of them. It's the first time I've wondered if they based a seagull off the immature version rather than the adult. I don't feel comfortable enough with this one to name it a whole new gull, so I'm going to say the closest bird is either the non-breeding black-headed gull or the immature slender-billed gull, both of which are seen in France.
Bonjour.
It has the light orange beak and legs of the immature slender-billed gull, as well as the black band on the tail. And then it has the mostly white plumage with black-tipped wings and black earmark of the adult non-breeding black-headed gull. So we'll say these two gulls fell in love and did what people do when they fall in love. Get married. Let's move on from that though, because I want to talk about the very interesting choice to have this kingdom have both seagulls and carbonated water. I don't know what parts of the internet you frequented in your life, but I remember a very viral thing, like probably about 10 years ago now, where people believe that if you give any bird, but specifically a seagull, anything carbonated like water or Alka-Seltzer tablets, that they would explode because they cannot pass gas. This wasn't just a belief, it was like a trend, where people would purposely feed the birds something carbonated because they wanted to see them blow up. Like, it was the cool thing to do. Look, I get that seagulls have a reputation for being greedy scavengers, and it's not like that's really wrong. If you've ever been around them with food, you know you gotta pull one of these. And sometimes even that's not enough. So yeah, they're annoying. But does that mean it's okay to kill everything we think is annoying? Do you see me exploding Cappy? But seriously, it is animal cruelty, like, by definition. I bring this up because I wonder if the game devs thought about that at all when they were making this kingdom, since I don't know if the whole carbonated seagull thing happened over there too. But also because it does bring into question, what are the seagulls drinking? I don't know where the rumor that they can't burp or throw up came from, and it's an interesting thing to have so many people believe because birds are pretty well known for regurgitating their food to their young. Unfortunately, there's a huge lack in research regarding birds and burping, and someone really needs to get on that. But what we do know is that birds can both regurgitate and throw up, which are two different things because one is voluntary and the other is involuntary. And as the old saying goes, if something can throw up, it can usually burp. However, birds have very fast and efficient digestive systems, so they don't really need to pass gas from either end. So if they're drinking carbonated water, they're not going to explode, but they will most likely experience a lot of discomfort, and maybe, if they drink enough of it, death. But it'd have to be like a really large amount, like an ocean full. So maybe these seagulls adapted to the carbonation, or maybe they're drinking from the various tiny ponds of regular water. As already discussed, seagulls will eat any and everything. So on the menu for them here is crab, fish, kombu, goombas, gushin takoyaki, and maybe, if they're really hungry, escargot. There is one more thing though. I took special interest in this plant here because it was the first one I had noticed that was actually producing something. I tried to identify it myself, I really did. But I'm just not built for plant identification. But I really wanted to add it to the list of food. So I reached out to Geo Nebula, who I mentioned all the way at the beginning of the video. I wanted to see if he could identify it, and he did. The leaves reminded him of grapevines, and it turns out the wine grape is the most observed grape on the coast of France. He also pointed out that the same leaves and fruits are found growing on cliff sides, so our gulls are getting smashed on some grapes. The Luncheon Kingdom, arguably one of the most unique kingdoms, also has one of the most unique birds, saltbirds. Birds made of salt with what I'm assuming are discarded cut up pieces of red and yellow bell peppers. They also have this cute pink tinge at the end of their tails. The closest real-life lookalike, I would say, is the white zebra finch. Apparently, zebra finches are bred for different color variations, with an all-white one being one of the varieties where it gets to keep its red beak. But this is obviously its own thing, so I'm going to keep the scientific name simple and call it sal pila, which basically translates to salt ball. But let's talk about the bird for what it is: sentient salt. There's a million questions that crop up because of this, and so I did a little digging and I think I cracked its life cycle. When things are humid and hot, salt absorbs moisture from the air and clumps together, and I think it's pretty obvious that it is both extremely humid and hot here. So the environment creates salt clumps that then become birds because of Mario World magic or whatever. But then I noticed that after the volcano erupts, there is a distinct decline in birds seen in the kingdom, so where did they go? Well, I think the salt bird started to undergo a different process called deliquescence, where the salt basically dissolves in the water it absorbed, so it literally becomes a puddle of very salty water. Then the same heat that formed it causes the water to evaporate and leaves behind the salty sediment to then repeat the process. Ba-boom! Saltbird life cycle. Thank you, you're too kind. Usually I would question what they eat, but I honestly believe the life cycle of these birds happens so rapidly that they don't eat anything. They don't make any noise either. The only hitch in my theory of everything I presented is that when the birds fly away, they do leave behind what look like feathers like all the other kingdom's birds. I'm just gonna say these are feathers made of salt. This was one of the most fun parts of the video to research, but now we move on to something not so fun. The cockatiel. Oh, but let me get rid of any confusion. The bird did nothing wrong. This is about the Volbonos. But let's talk about the bird first. The cockatiel. Super fun and creative name, but what's that? That's the cockatiel? The pink flying chicken. Those red dangling bits on its neck are called wattles, and it's a good choice to have because one of the functions of those things is to help birds stay cool, and clearly it's in a hot kingdom. But cockatiels don't have that. It also has the combo of short and then very long tail feathers that roosters tend to have, called sickle feathers. Plus, it's clearly not the best flyer considering its unbalanced weight-to-wing ratio, which is yet another plight of chickens. I've got no problem with the design of the bird itself, I just don't understand why they didn't call it a cookin'. I mean, right? Or if they really loved cockatiel, why didn't they design the bird to look more like a cockatiel? Listen, cockatiels have these tall head feathers. They could have taken those and shaped them in a way that more resembled a chef's hat. I had my brother drop some concept art to show a version of the cockatiel that looks a lot more like the name to me. The cookin has a unique action that involves regurgitating whole pieces of food and then throwing them into the pot. So I want to quickly answer the question of how this food is still whole. A lot of birds, though not all, have a unique part of their digestive system called the crop. This acts as a literal food pouch where the food sits until it goes to the rest of the digestive system where it will then be broken down. It's also interesting that one of the foods it spits out is a durian, since I'm pretty sure it can't be found anywhere else here. And here's what it sounds like. Judging by the way the people of Luncheon Kingdom are freaking out about this bird, it's clear that it's not normally around here, which is funny considering it seems to fit right in with this kingdom. But the Volbonos are saying it's gonna steal the meat they have dry brining and take off with it. But then when Mario entices the cockatiel with the meat, the bird takes the meat and puts it in the pot, which is exactly where they wanted it to be. So you might think, oh, well maybe it'll like the bird now since they know it's helping him out. No. Now they've switched tactics. Now they're saying the stew is gonna overcook and the bird's gonna fly off with it. First of all, how? Do you see the size difference? Second of all, you were just proven wrong by your original negative assumption, but we're gonna double down? It's literally called a cockatiel. Why are we assuming it's not here to cook? So then Mario inevitably defeats, or better yet, murders the cockatiel and cooks it in the stew, and let's see what the residents have to say about that. Oh. They're just excited about their festival. Except for this one person who says, "Whew, I heard the meat got in the stew." Yeah. The bird put it there. And you might try to say, oh, but the bird's attacking Mario. And yeah, I'd also attack the plumber balls deep in my soup. The Volbonans had a golden opportunity to develop a good symbiotic relationship with this bird, where it helps carry the big ingredients to the pot, and the Volbonans can share their alleged expertise in cooking with the cockatiel. But instead, they cooked it. And then they served it to every kingdom. And might I add, the description for the chef's hat in this kingdom reads, anyone wearing one of these makes many friends on Mount Volbono. Hey, don't be friends with someone who does this to you. Let me ask you something. Why do you think this place is called the Ruined Kingdom? You think it's because of the super cool dragon? No, it's because there are no birds. Not even Talkatoo is here, which makes it a great time to talk about him. Talkatoo is clearly a reference to the bird cockatoos. The devs clearly loved references to parrots. But at least this one makes more sense than the cockatiel. This bird is kind of like a combo of a cockatoo and a cockatiel. Its coloring is more typical of a cockatiel, but it has the short tail and big body of a cockatoo. And here's how he sounds. It's hard to know if the Talkatoo in Mario Odyssey is just a single bird that helps Mario on his journey or a bunch of different birds. But I believe the assumption is that it's just the one. So Talkatoo is helping Mario, but why and how? The why could be as simple as the fact that birds are wonderful and intelligent, and parrots are well known for being great pets that build deep bonds. But there is actually another possible reason that has to do with Talkatoo being controlled by a species that would reside on its head, but what would I know? I'm just a plumber. So let's talk about the how. The Talkatoo knows where every moon in every kingdom is, and so does the Hint Toad. But Toad gives the impression that he's done research on these locations because he's doing smart people things like having glasses and reading, even though what he's reading seems to just be the same brochures that we have. Look, that's literally New Donk City. So Toad is doing research, but is Talkatoo? He's not reading or having glasses, so he's dumb. No, I think Talkatoo actually has a special ability that all birds have. Birds in all kingdoms are often found in the areas of moons, almost like they're drawn to them, and there are many that will carry a moon as they fly. Clearly, birds aren't the only ones who like the moons. I just think they experience the world differently than we do and are just inherently more connected to nature. I mean, they're not the ones erecting skyscrapers. It's also possible that the moons give them more energy. We see moons be used specifically to power things like the Odyssey and the entirety of New Donk City. And it would explain why most of the birds that have a moon don't tend to stop moving. So anyway, yeah, that's how I think Talkatoo knows where all the moons are. He just doesn't have to be a nerd to figure it out. Bowser, Bowser, Bowser. Not a great guy to women, but let's see how he treats his birds.
You have to treat a bird like you treat a woman.
Go on.
Here, nestled amongst all the buildings, we find a Eurasian tree sparrow. It's very easy to mistake for a house sparrow, but two key distinguishers are the tree sparrow's solid brown cap and spotted cheeks. This is a bird commonly found all throughout Japan, which makes sense given the more Japanese-themed kingdom. Here's their sound. And this is interesting because BirdNet gave me a confidence score of 73% that this sound belonged to a house sparrow and not a tree sparrow, which is one of the highest confidence scores I've gotten so far. So either BirdNet is wrong, or someone at Nintendo needs to brush up on their birding skills. These birds eat a lot of insects in the breeding season, which is great because the autumn darter dragonfly lives here. But like most sparrows, they are primarily grain eaters, and there is an embarrassingly small amount of green here. So I don't know what they're eating here. I mean, all birds need green. Even our next bird, the Pokio. You might be surprised to learn, or maybe you won't be, I don't know what you know, that the Pokio is actually based on a real bird, which is the Japanese green pheasant. This is Japan's national bird. And it's valued for its ability to sense an earthquake before it happens, and it has deep roots in Japan's history, like being a messenger for the goddess Amaterasu, as well as an animal companion to a boy in folklore named Momotaro. Together they defeated a band of demons, which does make the Pokio's alliance in Odyssey a bit ironic. Unless it's aiming for crappy, in which case, it makes sense. But Pokio is its own bird, and I'm assuming the national bird of Bowser's Kingdom, which would also explain why they're depicted in these folding screens. Pokios are very unique in the way their beaks work. They can elongate and retract incredibly quickly. They're sharp enough to hurt and to impale, but also gentle enough to only do it when wanted. And they are extremely flexible. It's fascinating, and this Bonitor knows it. Diet-wise, I have to assume their weaponized beaks allowed them to be primarily carnivorous. Also considering that's kind of their only option. So they're eating koi fish, Goombas, and maybe even tree sparrows. Mushroom Kingdom. A perfect place to have mushroom birds. Oh. That works too? These birds are pretty simple in their appearance, mostly white with a light pink tinged tail and crested head. They sound very similar to other birds we've heard in the previous kingdoms. Pink is of course a wonderful choice for a peach kingdom, but pink is a pretty rare color for a bird, as I learned in the Lake Kingdom. So my first thought was that I wouldn't find a look-alike. But then I saw this. This is a leucistic red cardinal. Looks more pink than red, don't it? Leucism is a rare condition that causes partial pigmentation loss of different animals, resulting in pale or white coloring, usually focused to just the feathers of birds. This can result in a spotty white, mostly white, or entirely white appearance. This is different from albinism because albinism is an entire loss of pigmentation, meaning everything, including the eyes, are affected, and not just in color, but in vision too. Like I said, leucism is rare, and not only that, but the peach birds have different colored beaks and noticeably colored eyes. Not to mention, I've never seen a cardinal look like this kingdom's rare variant called the ringed eye bird, which I believe is actually nose exclusive. So, more than likely, this is actually a new bird. Alright, scientific name is Candidus persicum. Candidus meaning a bright white and persicum meaning peach. And it has two common names. Which one you use usually depends on who your favorite character is. Peach's passerine or the plumber's cardinal. Listen, I had to throw Mario a bone at some point. His entire life is basically just spent saving her. This place has plenty of sources of water and abundant nature, so these guys are eating good, with seeds, swallowtail butterflies, fruit, and a variety of flowers to choose from. Other good news, this kingdom doesn't have any music and less overlapping bird calls, which meant BirdNet gave me 3 relatively confident bird identifications. The Japanese bush warbler, the Jamaican oriole, and the Chinese huame. But once Peach decides to come back and rule again, she tells Mario that she decided to invite people from all over the world to visit. Which is honestly kinda nuts because that basically means she had a strict no visiting policy prior to this, despite actively visiting all the other kingdoms. And it wasn't just people she was shunning. Because once she comes back, every bird, aside from Klepto, Cockatiel, and the Golden Eagle, and the dragonflies are suddenly here now. Which, in my mind, suggests she used to have the toad shoot down anything that entered her airspace. On the other hand, it's also possible she forced them to come here because I don't know why a penguin would find this weather enjoyable. Although, when I see stuff like this, I think maybe Peach had the right idea about keeping her doors closed. The Odyssey will now be a resting place for all birds, like it was in the Wooded Kingdom, which I will give props to because I like the idea that the birds are representing the very journey that we've been on. And I appreciate that they're appreciating me. Kinda like Mario watching, if you will. When I got to the Moon Kingdom, I thought I'd be greeted with a special moon bird or a bird wearing a helmet because, come on, that's great. But what I found was even more interesting. Throughout the game, you'll see a couple of creatures that seem like an alien-robot hybrid. Namely, the Torque Drift that sucks up the flowers in the Moon Kingdom, and the UFO in the Wooded and Bowser Kingdoms. There's not any real information we can glean about these species, but in the Moon Kingdom, we can find a single mini Torque Drift. It functions the same as the native birds in other kingdoms, flying away into the air if you get too close and carrying a moon. So it's not our kind of bird, but I believe this is the aliens' version of a bird. I love a new bird and I love naming them. The scientific name will be Cephalus unicus. Kai coming from the Latin word caruleum for sky or heaven, phlos meaning flower, and unicus meaning unique or one of a kind. I let you guys have another say in the common name and the results were much closer this time. From least liked to most, we have Visiting Vireo, Star Sparrow, and the winner, Flower Dome Drone. And just as its name suggests, it's a little glass dome with a white flower-shaped skirt and an antenna that seems to function as its eye. Inside of the dome is one of the prized flowers from the Wooded Kingdom. You ever wanted to hear what an alien bird sounds like? Information on the diet cannot be found, though you could argue that the flowers are their food, but there's no way to know for sure what function the flower serves. These birds will not land on your nose in the Moon Kingdom, but you can find one in the Mushroom Kingdom, and there is an extremely rare chance of them landing on your nose in most of the Earth Kingdoms. So I went out and I tried, and I tried, and I tried, and then once I hit attempt 1,000, I knew I had to stop or this video would never come out. Listen, some birders are luckier than others, okay? And if I ever finally catch it, I'll post a short of it to YouTube. Don't make me feel worse about this than I already do. I've been editing, and I'm almost done, and I finally fucking got it! Ah! Yep, that's right. I'm the best birder around. And no, all that stuff about me not being able to find it wasn't a lie. That was all completely done being edited by the time I finally got it. And I left it in just to show how far in the process I was before it showed. And to show you that you should never doubt me. Would you be surprised to know that the darker side actually has birds? First of all, it doesn't have its own bird, and I didn't expect it to. But in this cute little celebration they have for you, you can find a blue jay sitting on top of one of the steam gardeners to help cheer you on. And they're not wearing a helmet, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised because nobody else is either. Then you go through this long course featuring a bunch of different mechanics you learn throughout the game, and then at the end, there's this power line that spells out thank you, and a bunch of the birds we've come across can be found here. though not all of them. As a bird lover, I deeply appreciate including the birds in the final thank you message because they absolutely did not have to do that, and they did it anyway. Do I understand how many birds are on the moon? No, and I don't care because it's cute and sweet, and clearly there's not much logic in this game in regards to who can and can't be on the moon without a helmet. But also, as a bird lover, I'm definitely going to point out that Klepto, Cockatiel, and even Talkatoo are not here. But you know what they're not missing from? The end credits. Which just feels weird to include in this scrapbook of memories because it's like, hey guys, you remember those birds we didn't understand, so we just... That was cool, right? And then poor Talkatoo over here has been done so dirty with their photo. Look at that. Imagine helping someone on their journey and expecting nothing in return, and the only photo they put of you in their scrapbook of memories is this. I bet Crappy made this scrapbook. Speaking of which, at some point during this video, I assume you wondered why I still hadn't talked about the very first kingdom, Cap Kingdom. And that's because this kingdom's birds pose a possible theory that could change everything we know about every bird in every kingdom, as well as the general state of the Mario world. But first, I want to talk about the Paragoombas. Obviously, not everything with wings is a bird, Exhibit A. But it does pose the question when you see one, especially because this one's wings seem like they're made out of feathers. And do you know what species feathers are unique to? I'll give you one guess. But Goombas also don't have beaks, which all birds have. But honestly, what really drew me to question them was the name Paragoombas. I was wondering if para was supposed to be a play on parakeet, since they obviously love referencing parrots, and it seems they call all flying versions of non-flying enemies para something. So I looked up the meaning of para as a prefix, and it can mean closely related to or almost. So almost a Goomba. It can also mean faulty or abnormal. This was important to me because I wanted to know if they were trying to insinuate that Paragoombas were a reference to birds, but I don't think they are. I think they just made the first species ever to have feathers that aren't a bird, so good for them, I guess. So let's look at our actual last birds. They're very white with an adorable top hat on. I think the assumption is that these are ghost birds based on their appearance and the fact that they live in a ghost town. But if that's true, I'm a little disappointed they don't at least have ghost tails. But of course, this would mean they probably don't need to eat or drink, which is great because there's barely anything here. And when you first see them, you're like, oh, so cute. Why don't more birds have hats on? And then it's like, yeah, why don't more birds have hats on? On second thought, why does most everybody wear hats? How often does the average person wear a hat? And then I saw this in the description of the Cap Kingdom plushie. These little froggies wear tiny top hats for self-defense, which looks so darn cute, they made a toy version. So the frogs here wear top hats for self-defense. Self-defense from what? I mean, they're certainly not being protected from any falling debris, so what else is there?
Yeah.
Oh, that? So they're protecting themselves from bonitors by wearing hats, and instead of taking a look at their actions and changing, the bonitors thought, oh, that's so cute, let's make a toy. That is diabolical. So of course, theory number one is that the birds of Bonneton also wear hats to protect themselves from being captured. Then comes theory number two. Based on this evidence of their general lack of remorse and a lot of stuff I both did and didn't show throughout the video, bonitors are evil and they use their birds as, get this, spies. That's right, your birds being spies theory might actually be true. We know from the game itself that bonitors can take any hat form they want, so how do I know that all these little tiny top hats aren't the bonitors? And how do I know that these birds aren't in other kingdoms watching invisibly because, based off of the invisible hat you can get in the game, I know they can turn invisible. And I don't care if the description says it's very rare. It could be rare because the bonitors have been keeping a secret stash of them. Oh, you need more proof? What is this? And this! They're a shipping kingdom. Why would they be shipping birds when we don't see these birds in any of the other kingdoms? I would mention how inhumane it is, but it's pretty in line with Cappy's personality. I checked every kingdom's crates that they have lying around, and I didn't see a single other kingdom have birds fly out of their crates. I don't have any words. Theory 3 is a bit different. If you don't believe that bonitors or Cappy are secretly or not so secretly evil, then I think these packaged ghost birds could actually be something else. The other kingdoms purposefully package and send their departed birds to the Cap Kingdom because, for whatever reason, they get to live out a second life as a ghost bird in the Cap Kingdom. It would account for why no other kingdoms have birds in their boxes, since it would be a bit traumatizing to come across. So, happy to end the theories on a positive note. And one last time, we have to name that Bird. Scientifically, I'm going with Petasus speculator. Petasus meaning hat, and speculator means like observer, watcher, spy. And the common name is Hatbird. That's it. Wow, it's been a beautiful journey with an honestly surprising amount of birds. Though, I have to say, I'm disappointed in the lack of variety of the birds' actions. They're pretty stagnant. Which is why I'm giving Mario Odyssey a 7 out of 10 for how good of a birding game it is. I have high standards, what can I say? Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you come back for more birds and an exploration of bonitors as a species. Because I have a lot of questions. Bye-bye! Alright, fine. Let's address the elephant in the room. I got a nose job, big deal. It's not like I lost my nose. It's always with me.